Hi, folks. Welcome to Tech Topic, an hour-long deep dive into technology and its implications for society. I am your host, DC Rockwell, and this is your co-host, Elio Greco. Elio, how you doing, dude?
Pretty good. Good to be back. It's been a little while.
It has. So, for those of you who are new to the show, which is all of you, this is a re-recording of our first show because when we did a review of the original audio, it turned out it lived up to the name of the episode. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, my mic could be going completely wrong during the entire recording of our first show. So we've decided to do it again. So those of you who were with us last night, this is more or less going to be the same exact show. Elio, what was your experience with recording for the first time in 3 years?
It takes a little getting back into. There's certain conversational cadence and stuff that we had a really good flow back a few years ago when we were doing this. So finding that again. But yeah, the technical stuff is always fun. And right before this show, computer crashed, of course. There's a hiccup where you plug it in and just boom, kernel panic when you switch from Wi-Fi to Fire or the Ethernet adapter I have. So always something, man. You know the industry. Always something to keep you on your toes.
Indeed. So let's just jump right into. Let's repeat what we were doing yesterday because I felt that the community needed an explanation for why we were gone for 3 years. So let's say that again, which is that basically, we got very busy in our lives. I started a new job at a big company downtown Denver, and I threw myself into it. I really tried to make the most of that opportunity. I had a great team. I had some great work to do there, and I was struggling with making it work with family life and with all the other things that were going on in my life. So it turned out that the only thing that could give at the time was this show. And so we made a decision to shut the show down. And that was something that turned into an immediate regret in my life. I missed this community. I missed being able to talk with Elio on the regular. I really missed, pretty much everything that has to do with it, the whole production and everything. So, we've been working our butts off for the last year almost to try and get back online. And what can we say besides thank you to everybody who is currently watching and listening, because we don't deserve it. We definitely don't. We basically did not... we made a bunch of false, empty promises to the community saying we're going to get back online, and then we didn't.
Well, so, I don't know if I'd say empty, but yeah, we were unable to follow through on those. At the time, we fully intended those to happen. And as so often happens in life, like you said, you got busy. I actually got super busy too. And so I didn't really push for, like, as much as I loved doing the show, it was a huge amount of time. And I had some projects that ramped way up as well. And so, yeah, we just kind of both moved on, did some other stuff, even though we were looking forward to growing that. And the good news is in that time, I've gone to some interesting conferences and things, met some really interesting people, which we're starting to have some really good people on the show, and we hope to really ramp that up. But this time, I think we're actually going to do that. And we'll probably have a few of the people we had on before back for updates on their areas of expertise. But then there's some new people I've got to meet at different conferences, at Stanford, at the Internet Archive. There's some really cool stuff happening in tech. So in future episodes, we're going to talk about problems, especially tonight. But we're also going to talk about solutions and how do you actually deal with these? And it's not that nothing's happening. The trick is, how do we get the stuff that's happening to all of you rather than just those of us who are in the field playing with it?
Indeed. So, Elio, real quick, why don't you tell everybody what you've been up to for the past 3 years?
Well, I've always been a dev, as we both have. That's how we first worked together many, many years ago, decades ago. And then I kind of got pulled in over the last 5 or 6 years, kind of by accident, into cybersecurity. So I was I really like working with talented people like yourself, like some of the other people, Alex and David and Brandon and a whole bunch of people we've had on previous shows. And I could just be greedy and I could just go ahead and take work at startups with phenomenally talented teams and just, get to work with amazing people and not care what happens to anyone else. But I don't know. I'm not into that. So instead, I'm like, how do I make more of these people? I'm willing to invest time to try to grow the next generation of talent. So I get to work with some more phenomenal people. So started doing Code Day Phoenix. We did almost 20 of those at this point before COVID hit, and we're kind of pausing right now. So anyway, it's been amazing. Some of the kids I've met through some of the code days have been honestly intimidating. I look at like Ari and Joshua and David and Rudy and some of these kids, and it's like, oh my God, if I had been that good at that age, I was nowhere near their level at their age. And people look up to me now. Like, where would I be? I'd be like, global scale if I was that good. So it's been pretty fulfilling. I've had the privilege of working with some just incredibly talented people. And like I said, a little career shift, watching that whole drama. We'll save that for another show. And now kind of finally getting back into dev and looking forward to being back in this field.
Awesome, man. I'm really happy that we're back online, and to everybody in the community, thank you so much for sticking it out with us. We're going to be publishing new content for you every week. It should be published at 2 a.m. on Mondays. But this week, because of all of these last second technical difficulties and having to re-record, we're recording this on a Monday, and we're going to be releasing it at 2 a.m. on Wednesday on whatever your favorite podcasting application is. So let's jump into our topic for tonight. It is what could possibly go wrong in setting up a live stream.
Part 2, Playing with Fire, yeah, Part 2.
Part 2, indeed. Right off the bat, what went wrong on the last one was, a microphone going out. But that's just the last in a whole string of a series of unfortunate events. Really beginning with some studio hardware. So, when I was first trying to set this up in a room, I didn't have the right sized room, and I had to actually clear out my whole living room. And because I'm in a very small apartment, I had to clear out the whole living room and turn this into an audio-visual studio, basically. So, there was the first major hurdle to overcome, which was rearranging everything in my tiny little life here in this apartment. Then the second thing that went wrong was that I only have 20 amps of electricity in this apartment, and those 20 amps quickly got filled up or used by the computer that I was using, which was a 2013 Mac Pro, which leads us to the next issue, which is that 2013 Mac Pro turned out not to be powerful enough to be able to run the whole show. And then it had a problem where Apple made the operating system obsolete. So I could not get any of the new patches for that. And then it led us to the next problem, which was internet. Internet meaning we didn't have enough bandwidth for being able to pull off all this stuff. And
now wait a minute. I feel like some clarification is in order. When you say Apple made the operating system obsolete, what exactly do you mean?
So Apple made it so what I should say is it made the hardware obsolete so the new operating systems would not run on it. And I tried a bunch of different hacks, and it required BIOS updates and things like that in order to try and hack it into allowing it to run these later operating systems. And they ended up not working and then bricking the entire server. So the only thing that server runs right now, a 2013 Mac Pro, Windows.
And I seem to remember you talking about trying to get the graphics card working on there, and a little bit of monopoly, back and forth, kind of a sumo match between Apple and NVIDIA. And I remember that was an issue as well, wasn't it?
It was. I forgot about that. But yeah, basically NVIDIA and Apple have sort of a beef. And so NVIDIA tried to provide graphics drivers, but Apple sort of locked them out after a certain while, and then NVIDIA just gave up. So yeah, we couldn't use a new graphics card with it, and at the time we really thought we needed that graphics card, but more on that later. Elio, what was your experience with trying to set up your own room and your own desk and all of that?
Yeah, I have a lot more space out here. So I had like 2 rooms to choose from. And I'm like, screw it. I'll just give it its own room since I do have the luxury of that extra space. So, and that definitely changed what we bought. You can't see it behind me because the green screen is working. But I was able to buy a really cheap one, whereas DC had to buy a really fancy green screen so he could actually put it away. Whereas for me, I don't have to put it away. I just leave it up in the room all the time. I leave all the lights up. Everything's just set up. Maybe if I clean it up a little bit, I'll turn the camera around and let everyone see, but not right now. I'm staring into a disaster because I just shove stuff out of the way. So behind the scenes right now is not OSHA compliant. But everything on this side looks great. So mostly my needs were not so much the space, but they were this mic. Before we were just using basically, well, I did buy another mic, but it was a little tiny, I forget the name right now, but it clipped onto the top of the computer, a little USB mic. It was okay. I mean, it's meant for portable use. It's not really meant to be a professional. It's meant to be like entry professional-esque level. And DC behind the scenes, he's like, dude, you got to get a better mic. He's like, come on, man. And like every episode, he's like, get a better mic. And so I finally did. I got the standard, the Blue Yeti here, and it's been good. It's, it has proximity effect, so I got to be right up in it. I can't be far away. You can see the difference in sound quality versus if I'm right up in it. So I try to keep it so it doesn't hide my mouth and my face, but it sounds way better if I'm right up on the mic. So we got a fancy arm to make sure that can happen. And just figuring all that. That was actually the tricky bit. That arm that we got, it's meant to really like lean way, way out. And where I'm set up right now, the arm is only maybe 1.5 feet from me, and it's supposed to be farther away. So I ended up having to like back off this tension screw till it basically fell apart internally. So if I wanted to use this arm properly, I'd probably have to completely take it apart and like thread the tension screw back on. But other than that, it's just upgrading the mic, upgrading the camera. I think we're going to get to that. And just trying to get the quality, because I was just doing it on the webcam before, and I always buy refurbs. So we're talking not a new webcam. We're talking years and years old, where at this point, everyone's moved to high def stuff. Like 4K is starting to get relatively common at this point, and pretty much everyone's on high def right now on 1080p. So just mostly, in my case, the space was less an issue than getting the gear up to snuff.
Yeah, well, at least you're focusing on the important things in a podcast, like not covering your beautiful face. The mic boom arms are a tricky business. Actually, you have to mount them in a certain way, so this way they don't sort of like get in the way of the camera, and so that way the microphone can be held at a certain place. And like you said, the tension screws and everything, they're a little more tricky than you would expect. So if you're going to get a mic boom arm, my suggestion is to get the one that you were thinking of, try it out real early, and be prepared to return it.
Yeah. And the last thing that's not intuitive is make sure you're talking into the right part of the mic. I don't know if you could tell on here, but I'm talking into kind of, let's see, I don't have anything handy to demonstrate, but I'm talking into the side of my mic, which with the Blue Yeti, right, you don't talk into the top. It's not pointing at my face. It's kind of like this. I'm talking into the side. And a lot of people make that mistake. I've seen other podcasts where they're talking into the top of it. You're not supposed to use it that way. Whereas the one you have, I believe you do talk straight into the top, right?
Yes, you do. So this is the Rode Procaster. And we had to get this because our new mixer only accepts XLR inputs, and the Blue Yeti doesn't. So if you are going to be hooking up a podcasting mic directly to your computer, then the Blue Yeti is actually a great option.
Really easy.
Multiple people I've talked to really like the sound of it. They really like the ease of use. There's a bunch of cool features on it, like interview mode, where you have a microphone on one side, a microphone on the other, and you can just sit the microphone in between each other. Very useful for getting a podcast off the ground. But this one here, I just really I needed something that was XLR, and I decided to go with something that was sort of a gold standard when it comes to dynamic mic. So I went with this, which is the Rode Procaster. And for those of you at home, or those of you listening on the podcast, I'm just going to show it off here for everybody who's watching on the video. But yeah, you talk directly into the top of it, and you need one of these pop filters, or rather, this is really a wind filter, covers. A wind cover, but it works pretty well as a pop filter as well. So I don't really need the pop filter to go with that. And, that pretty much sums up our audio setup. There's some more software stuff that we'll get into a little bit later, though. So after audio, we were like, okay, well, are we going to be doing just a regular old podcast? And how would we actually do that live on like Twitch and YouTube? We realized it wasn't very easy. And we kind of like looked around at who was like doing it the way we would want to do it. And, with unlimited funds, unlimited effort, we really like the way that Joe Rogan has his setup. It's a nice, multiple camera angles, a place for guests to come in and sit down. We'll get there, but we at least wanted it so this way everybody could interact with us and they could see us live recording the show. So we had to get into some video stuff. And that led us into the wonderful world of digital cameras. Oh boy, I got it easy. So I got it easy because I just looked up some YouTube videos. I found a person on YouTube that had tried out a bunch of cameras, and I looked on Facebook Marketplace to see if somebody was selling that camera, and they were. So I got a Lumix G7, set it up, first time, just works. It's a great camera. You can look at it online to learn some more stats about it. But one of the things I really like about it is that it hooks up to the iPad down here and allows me to have a full iPad preview of everything that the camera is doing, so I can refocus it if I need to, adjust the white balance and all that stuff straight from the iPad. Aleo, on the other hand, tell us about your adventures with Canon.
Oh, the camera odyssey. So as I said, we kind of hid the crappiness with our aesthetic, and I had like a tiny little video that we, in the old Automate All the Things, I was on like just the head in a TV on top of a body. So it worked out. It looked good. It worked okay, even though the video was super low def. But we want to do something a little better this time. So the webcam wasn't going to cut it. We tried that, just not there. Again, 5+ year-old webcam's not going to cut it these days. So you would think my big fancy Canon 6D, which is the entry-level full frame. It's the cheapest full frame sensor. So that, I'm not going to go too much into that, but there are different sizes of sensors. It's starting to matter less and less, but generally the bigger the slab of silicon that's in the camera, the better the images, the higher the dynamic range, which is still true, the lower the noise, which is actually, that's getting better. You can get low noise in some cell phone cameras now, which are tiny. So anyway, generally, like, you want a big 35mm full frame is going to give you beautiful pictures. You're going to be able to do 8K resolution, all that kind of fun stuff, in theory. The reality is that it takes a lot of electricity, and thus it generates a lot of heat. So the problem with the big DSLRs is if you don't buy a brand new one where they've optimized some of the power stuff and added cooling, if you bought, like, say, a Canon like 1DS, which is their flagship, which is like an $8,000 camera body, again, without the lens. So you want to throw a lens on there. You probably want to put at least $1,000, $2,000 lens on there. So it's a $10,000 starter package for the 1DS. The 6D is closer to around $2,000. So again, this is not a low-end camera, but it's an older one. So it'll time out. It'll just get too hot. It'll just stop recording after like 30 minutes to not burn out the sensor, because you don't want to be frying the sensor on a $2,000 camera. So that's not an option. I think the Mark II might be able to go longer than that. Tried to buy a lower end version, the Canon T7i. Pay very close attention when you're buying cameras, because I ended up with the T7. I didn't realize they were still selling both. So that made a small but really, really important difference. So the T7i is guaranteed to work with the little digitizer I'm using, the little Camlink 4K. It's on their site, says definitely works. We've checked it. It works. We know it works. The T7 is not listed on there, and it almost works when you hook up the camera and there's something called clean HDMI out, which basically means just the video. None of the little squares like the facial tracking and the mode settings and all this, just the video. And some cameras will give you just the video, and the camera I'm using right now actually lets you choose whether it like makes it look like the viewfinder or whether it's just the video. It's actually a separate setting, which is kind of cool. But you can almost get that on the T7. But the problem is whenever you set it up that way by hooking up the camera via USB, the problem is the frame rate's too low that way. So then when you unhook it and try to hook in the HDMI, it forgets all the settings and it's back to dirty HDMI. And there's always like a box on your face. It's always showing where it's metering. So anyway, that was the Odyssey with the T7. Had to return that and then grabbed the little Canon Vixia. Costco had a nice sale, like $200 for a little Vixia R80 camcorder, which is what I'm on right now, which pretty good. It's actually a really nice little camcorder, really phenomenal motion stabilization. I bought it. I'm shaking it. I'm like, what's loose in here? Why is this? This is not okay. Why is it rattling? This is brand friggin' new. And then I was like, oh, wait. That's right. They actually have stuff in there that moves, that when you power it on, it doesn't shake anymore. That's the optical stabilization. So if you buy a camera and you shake it and it rattles, try turning it on, see if it still rattles. It's probably fine.
Wow.
Weird, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's working reasonably well. I'm reasonably happy. It's not the highest quality. It's not a brand new model, but it does have super fast autofocus. I was telling DC, it's creepy. Like when I'm looking at the screen right now, I'm talking straight into the camera, looking just off to the side on the screen. And even if I cover my face with my hands, like it tracks your face like some kind of like government military. It's insane. It does not lose where you are. So it's really fast, really accurate autofocus, which is really nice. But yeah, that's been the camera Odyssey. Is like four different cameras, two of which kind of worked. So choose carefully, do your research. And like DC said, definitely, I would say look at YouTube reviews. There was actually a video I found. I'd do a shout out, but I can't remember the channel right now. But a really phenomenal review of the Vixia R80, and it was all time stamped. You could jump right to the aspect you want to look at. So that's what gave me the confidence that it wasn't going to be a wasted $200, that I could buy it and it was going to work, because I've been burned a few times before.
Yeah. So damn, a lot of camera work. I can't even tell you how long we spent on trying to figure out the camera settings, especially with the camera that wasn't working for Aleo. That Canon was awful, and it kept giving us like it just kept on putting us in circles where like changing one setting would turn off another setting, and it was awful. So we finally settled on a Lumix G7, and what was yours?
Canon Vixia R80.
Nice. And so they're working. We're going to stick with this for now. I think Aleo might get another DSLR in the future, but for now, let's leave well enough alone.
The one other thing I will say that I'm enjoying having this camera is for my 6D, I had a really nice, I think it's a 263 AT tripod from Vanguard, which does some crazy stuff. The top tube comes out and actually can swing down, which gives you a ton of flexibility if you're trying to do like macro shots of plants and things, like if you're out hiking. It's a bit of a heavy tripod for hiking, but they do make a super lightweight version in carbon fiber if you got that kind of money. But you can swing it down and hang the camera upside down or really close to what you're shooting. So there's a ton of flexibility. So I'm actually liking not having the camera touching my desk. It's on a separate tripod. So if I go like this and I tap and shake, the computer's going all over the place right now, the way my laptop's mounted. But it's fine because the camera's on a separate tripod, because that's been a problem in the past, is when you're using the webcam, as you're typing, it'll just start jittering the camera, and it's really distracting when the camera is vibrating because you're typing. So that's one tip, is try to use a separate camera just so you can get it off of the computer, or make sure the computer's isolated from the keyboard.
Absolutely. And of course, you can't even have a good camera if you don't have good lighting. I had to learn this the hard way. I brought my nice DSLR home. I'm like, yeah, I got a new camera and I'm going to look great in it. And I didn't. I looked worse than my webcam. And I was just like, what's going on with this thing? You know, what if oh, what did I do wrong? And so I watched some more YouTube videos, and they were like, oh yeah, by the way, these things are devices that capture light, more light, and the more it can capture. So I went out, or I didn't actually. At first, I was going to go out and I was going to get those Elgato stream lights. But then Elio and I got talking, and he was, his nonprofit was willing to actually sponsor the show and buy us some lights. So he bought us actually, I will point out that Elio, your nonprofit is very, thank you so much for this. He bought the mixer, the microphone, the lights here, and shoot, what else did you? The Stream Deck down here. We'll get to that stuff.
Wirecast and all that. But technically, It's not me. It's me and my co-founder. Got to mention Christina. And yeah, we talked about it. And she's like, oh yeah, if you guys are talking about tech and how that can make society better. And she's like, totally, we can sponsor that. That fits right in line with our charter. So we decided to go ahead and do that. And so far, so good. Now that we're finally on the air.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Elio. Thank you, Christina. We could not do this without your contributions. So the lighting that we ended up getting were these Neewers. Neewer. We
that's Neewer for everyone.
Yeah, and they're very decent lights. Guess there's not much we can say about the lights themselves other than their color temperature and RGB LED lights with no flicker. And they just work. And they have the ability to work off of AC or off of battery. So pretty cool lights. They come with a tripod. And I really don't have very many. Oh, they also have like barn doors on them. No real complaints about the lights themselves. But
the power cord is nice and long. You got plenty of, you don't have to have it like right next to the outlet. It's like a 20-foot power cord. So the hardware is reasonably solid. The only thing it doesn't always remember, one of my lights, I got the 3-pack, doesn't always remember the setting you turned it off on. So when you turn them back on, you do have to like set them back up a lot. That's annoying. But other than that,
fun.
Good build quality and the hardware is great.
Yeah, and even came with a carrying case, so pretty neat. But quickly, why don't you tell them the downside of these lights?
So, you can buy them a 2 or a 3-pack for basically the cost of one of the Elgatos. But you could tell where they save the money because the app, they have Bluetooth, and so you can actually control. And I'm realizing any of our old security people are still watching are like, oh, I'm going to find where he lives, and I'm going to go mess with the lights via Bluetooth. So now we'll know what happened.
Hey, if they can figure out how to do that and tell us, try it, because we need a way to control these lights easier.
Yeah. So the app, I love the idea of being able to control the lights. I'm almost scared to pull the app back up on the phone because it's not reliable. It works sometimes, but it's not reliable. It doesn't always reliably sync to the lights. I guess based on the Amazon reviews, the App Store reviews, I am luckier than most. It generally, I can fiddle with it and get it to sync. And I've never had a time where it's not going to work at all. It just takes a lot of fiddling and just basically killing the app, restarting the app, killing the app, turning the lights off, turning them on, that kind of stuff, that little dance that we're all so accustomed to in today's IoT world. But then the other problem, the really big problem is you can't do settings. And it not only can you not do presets where this light's one color and this light's, this temperature and intensity, etc. It forgets all the lights. So every single time you launch the app, if you go more than a few minutes, the app times out. You have to re-add all the lights, which is super aggravating. And then, of course, when you add them, whatever your layout is, trying to remember light A, B, and C, which control it is, it's all different every time. There's no way to memorize that. So the software is, it works if we're being really generous with the definition of works. It does what it's supposed to occasionally with a lot of fiddling, and it's a lot of tending. So cool concept. It'd be great if it was more predictable and reliable.
Indeed. The thing that really makes it less usable for me is that it doesn't hook up to the self-imposed government spying device known as Alexa. Because I like being able to just say, computer vaporwave, and then it'll make some vaporwave, colors happen for me. I like that. And actually, I just realized I never did see whether or not, because they are Bluetooth, and that thing does allow you to pair Bluetooth lights to it. So maybe, I don't know. We'll have to see if that's possible, but
if it's the right protocol, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But anyway, if you're planning on getting those lights, definitely think about how important remote operation is to you. Think of how important remembering your settings is to you. And other than that, pretty decent lights.
Yeah.
In addition to those lights, I also got these other lights called ESDs. They are very basic light boxes that are cloth-based, but they sort of have this wire in them that expands them out into a box with a piece of cloth that goes over the front for diffusion. And it just has a regular old light socket. I don't know the name of those standards, but regular light socket in the back of it and a on-off switch. And I use that in order to, which brings us to our next thing, in order to light the green screen behind us, or behind me. And Alio, thankfully, he doesn't really need his green screen all that well lit, because his is more green than mine. But, which is lame, because mine's an official Elgato green screen you pull down from the ceiling. I mounted it up there, and it's just not as green as yours, which is a big piece of felt.
Cheap Amazon, just green, vividly green dyed wall-sized piece of cloth. I will say it's very generous. This thing, we could cut it up into 4 usable green screens. I only need to cover a little area behind me. It literally covers the entire wall on a standard size room. So,
well, I'll just have to figure out a way to spray paint my green screen or something, or dye it. So we'll see if we can get it more green than
green with
Elgato
envy,
allows it to be. Man, it's really. I'm a little bit envious that yours is so easy to set up, and I have to very carefully position all my lights. My lights are marked on my floor with tape. I have to remember exactly where to put them.
And we had that one issue where your camera was doing, and mine, I've had a similar issue where it was doing kind of an auto white balance thing, and it was changing the green to almost like a brownish, yellowish kind of tan. Because remember, we fixed that; it got a lot easier. And that's another thing. If you look at the previous, I think we're going to probably leave up the previous recording of this. I look really I look like I'm in a public restroom. I look really white and washed out. And I forgot this camera has some decent features, but if you want to set a custom white balance, you cannot manually set a custom white balance. What you have to do is get a piece of paper or something nice and neutral, and you have to hold it up, and you tell it to automatically calibrate the white balance. And it works. It works great. But I forgot to do that last time, and so it overcompensates, and you get really washed out. Even if I turn the color temperature on my lights way down so they're really kind of orange, it still washes it out. So anyway, don't forget to set your white balance for both your green screen and your how you look on camera.
Yeah, mine has an auto white balance on it, but for some reason, here's some of the funkiness with cameras. If you have the auto white balance on a Lumix G7, the autofocus is what will actually cause it to change on you as you're going. And when you're trying to key a chroma, what's it called? Chroma key.
Chroma keying. Yeah, that's what it's actually called.
Yeah, when you're chroma keying, then you really need it to stay the same. It works now. We're not going to touch it. Leave it alone.
That's kind of where now everything's working. We're just trying to not touch anything to break it again.
Indeed. So now that we have our audio and our video hardware, we needed some computer hardware, because these cameras don't actually hook up to the computer via anything like USB. We actually, they have HDMI out. And so we needed a way to get the HDMI into the computers. And at the time, my experience with Elgato was that it was laggy. It had a 2-second lag to it, or latency. It also had... It was just a big honking piece of hardware that was dangling out of the side of my laptop, and it just didn't work all that well. for live recording where you really want to be able to see yourself in real time, so this way you can make sure that everything's good. It's really awkward when you're looking at a reference or a monitor and you move and you move a little bit afterwards, or especially if you move a lot afterwards. So we got a new computer and loaded that up with an NVIDIA RTX 2080 because originally we were going to use it for the NVIDIA RTX voice functionality, which was working great. It was working fantastic. It was
the operative word.
Yeah, and then they discontinued RTX Voice and turned it into RTX Broadcast, and it stopped working. It works, but now it has this scratchy poppy stuff in it. Lots of people on the NVIDIA forums are plagued by this, and we just couldn't deal with it, so we ended up just using the built-in noise cancellation filters that are available in our streaming software, which we will get to. The other piece of hardware that we got was a Stream Deck. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Elio, tell us about your capture card.
Yeah, I was just looking over. I have my other one. I forgot to pull that where into reach so I could show that off to people. But I have an old Elgato ITV from way back in the day when that was like digitizing your video and actually like watching TV on the computer. Like, oh, you could do that now before TiVos and everything. And it's pretty good size. It's smaller than a laptop, but it's a lot thicker, and it's pretty light, but it's huge. And so it's crazy to see the Camlink 4K, which is what I have now, which is basically like a large thumb drive. It's just slightly bigger than a normal thumb drive, and it works pretty good. I'm not having too many of the issues that DC was talking about, the lag and everything. Yeah, it works pretty good. So I'm happy with it. It does get a little bit warm, so you want to make sure it has a little bit of airflow, but so far so good. And right now, actually, it's working through the hub. I used to plug it directly in, but it seems like it does fine through the hub, which is nice because the hub I have automatically shuts everything off when I unplug the computer. So yeah, so far so good.
Nice. I'm glad that they got that figured out. So now it can do pretty high. I saw they have a 4K version. And,
yeah, that's the one I have.
Oh, okay, nice.
We're not using that. We're capturing lower than 4K, but in theory, we're ready.
Yeah, still, the fact that they got 4K into a much smaller form factor and they got the lag out of it, or the latency out of it, that's everything I wanted out of the first Elgato stream capture that I got. Oh, well. No, I went with a Magewell, by the way. It's a Magewell HDMI 1080p dual capture card. So if we want dual camera angles at some point, we can do that. But for now, just using the one. And it just works exactly the way you would want it to. So yeah, we also have you have another thing. Oh, well, I didn't go into it yet. The Stream Deck. Stream Deck is, I got to say, this thing is awesome. It is absolutely essential for any kind of live streaming. We got the 32 key one, and it is just so convenient to be able to switch between different, we can switch between different scenes. I can play sounds through it. I can start and stop the stream. It's really awesome. I mean, it makes it so I can hit a button and do cool stuff like this.
I was going to say, you should describe it for people who are nice. There we go. There's our video monitor. But describe, what is a Stream Deck for people who are listening only?
Yeah, so the Stream Deck is a little device that sits on your desktop, and it gives you a grid of 8x4 buttons that you can assign, and they each have an OLED, a little screen behind them. And so you can set your own graphics on them. When you click on it, it will perform different tasks for you. I have it set up so this way I have these custom buttons that will switch different scenes. And if you're listening at home, what I just did was I brought up my monitor screen up on an actual monitor on our screen on the stream, a screen on the stream, and with a click of a button, I can change its shape. I can take it back off of the screen. And it's super convenient for being able to do scene switches like that. I can also play music and have that come in, have it fade back out. Pretty awesome. it's just too useful. I don't know if I could ever do live streaming with anything other than that. Although Alio does. What do you use?
So I also have something, because you need to switch programs. You need to be able to get some muscle memory. And this is where I really think Steve Jobs was wrong. This is something like, buttons are awesome. If you look at the old space shuttle cockpits and all the, airplane cockpits, there's still a ton of buttons, because the great thing about a button is you can learn by muscle memory where it is and just reach to it. And depending on the type of button or dial or whatever, you don't have to think much. You can tell where it is, just like in a car. You would not want to replace all the buttons like Tesla has with a touchscreen, because touchscreens you have to look at. They're modal. You have to see what mode they're in and then figure out where to tap to hit the button, which takes a lot of cognitive processing power. So I'm not doing nearly as intricate stuff as DC. He's kind of running the whole show. I just need to kind of switch between programs and keep an eye on what's going on, and try to keep an eye on chat, which I totally forgot to bring up yesterday. So I didn't see any of that last night. I use this little guy. It's a Contour Shuttle Pro V2. It's actually made for, oh, that's fun. The camera locked on to the little 3 buttons in the middle as a face. But it has a little jog shuttle here. So I have the middle one set to do volume. I have the outer shuttle set to do scrolling if I'm looking at articles that we're talking about, or just scrolling in a document. And then all the buttons, oh, I forgot to point that out last time. There's little nubs between the buttons. So you can feel, just totally by feel, where you are. And you can make sure your hand placement on this thing is always exactly where you think it is. And so I have a number of different programs set up on there. So I just lay my hand on that. I can mute the mic. I can, jump to other programs. I can scroll. I can change volume settings. It's really, really good to have that button board. And there's a ton of different, like this one's a lot cheaper than the one DC has. I forget the price right now, but I think it's between $100 and $200. And there's a whole bunch of options for these button boards, and some are real cheap. You're talking like $50-$60. Some are, hundreds of thousands of dollars for the big crazy ones. But I think in podcasting, I originally got this actually, and a tablet for photo retouching. And it's really nice. I set up the buttons where I had a certain flow where I had to do about 1,000 photos. And so I wanted to get through them quickly. And the first thing I would do was like adjust the contrast, the exposure on the raw image. And then I would go and I would clean some other stuff up. I'd adjust the white balance and whatnot. And then I'd go and I'd like paint out the dust specks and everything. And I had a flow that I just got into that was always the same 4 steps each time. And it was great. I would just, under each finger, I would just be like pinky first, then the next, and just go through all of them. And it let me really move quickly and get through those 1,000 photos, probably honestly, at least a week or two faster than I would have been able to if I had to like mess with keyboard shortcuts and everything. And one hand was just on the stylus and one hand was able to control the program, and I barely had to touch the keyboard. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that maybe I'll just get some BBs and glue them in between certain keys. So I have the little visual or the tactile indicator of where certain buttons are. So yeah, took us a bunch of extra hardware in order to sort of tie everything together. I also mentioned earlier there's an iPad involved in this, but that software, as far as I know, works on any Android app, tablet as well. So you can get like a sub $100 Android tablet, and I'm sure it would do the same thing that this iPad's doing right now. And so that brings us to software, and this is probably 40% of the cost so far.
Well, I guess we got the other computer in there, but that's about right. Actually thinking it through all the stuff. Yeah, it's about 30-40% at least, even with all the mics and computers and everything.
Yeah. So we used a software package called Game Show on Automate All the Things, and it was great, but it was discontinued by its parent company, Telestream, because it was I think it's because it was cannibalizing sales of Wirecast, their flagship product. And so we ended up getting Wirecast because it's the workflow that we like, and it allows you to basically put together, live streams in the same way that you would do it with, like, say, Photoshop. And it allows us to do all of these, for those of you who are watching, it allows us to do these interesting, transitions with animations, and it's very simple. I can, have it be just me with this, with the TV there, or it can be both of us with the small TV, or I can make it so this way it's, it's off screen. It's pretty awesome, actually, to be able to do those kinds of animations with such little effort. And that's why we went with it instead of OBS. The other reason why we started using it is because of a feature that we both love and hate called Rendezvous. Elio, why don't you tell them our experience with Rendezvous quickly?
Yeah, hopefully I'm not looking fuzzy to anyone. So Rendezvous is a super cool concept for anyone who's played with like Apache Guacamole in the open source space where you could do screen sharing straight through the browser without installing software. Rendezvous is the same idea for video. So it's really cool. If we want to have guests on, which we definitely do, we can just give them a link. And if they're using a modern browser, they should be able to click the link and they can set up all their camera stuff. It has a little configuration screen and they can put their name on there and then just pull them in. And it's kind of like Zoom. I'm sure everyone's familiar with Zoom, but it's made specifically to integrate with Wirecast and be this clean video stream and integrate a little more tightly than something like Zoom or I'm forgetting some of the other ones. I don't know if you could do this stuff with Google, if you could pull Hangouts in, but there's a whole bunch of other video conferencing things that everyone's using. This is an integrated part of Wirecast. So the concept, again, just like the lights, awesome, great concept. The problem is we've run into some issues with video compression artifacts, and it's been behaving better, I will say, than it had been. Not perfect, but better. But I used to have to do this and wipe my hand across the screen because these artifacts would build up and they would just persist. Like there's a thing, I and P frames, where you give a P frame, which is primary, and then you just paint on just the little bits that change. This is a common video compression technique. And so the more P frames that you have, the more good test of the filter, by the way, the more P frames you have, the more data it's going to take, but the smoother, the cleaner the video is going to be because they're an entire frame. The more iframes you have, it's going to take a very tiny amount of bandwidth. But the problem is if your network connection is not absolutely perfect and you miss a few iframes, it's painting on parts that it shouldn't be painting on because there's stuff that didn't get painted in that's missing now. And that's when you're watching TV, you start seeing those weird gray blocky artifacts. Whoops, we missed a few iframes. Let's get that next P frame through there to repaint the entire screen and clean it up. And I don't know what they're doing codec wise, but it seems like the P frames are few and far between on Rendezvous. So the only way to get it to really clean it up is to just, again, wipe your hand, like basically cover the entire screen temporarily and force it to basically turn an iframe into a P frame and repaint the entire thing. So that's been aggravating, but it's been behaving a little better.
But it is an improvement over how it worked, say, 4 months ago, where it just constantly disconnected you.
That was fun.
That was awful. And it also coincided with a great feature of Wirecast back then, where when the person went away, a giant red question mark was left in their place. So
yeah.
It left few creative options open to us. But all in all, Wirecast seems to be working pretty well right now. I mean, knock on wood, but
don't say it.
Yeah,
don't say it.
I know.
Luckily, we're near the end here. You're gonna kill it.
I know. But still, we're simultaneously streaming to YouTube and to Twitch, and it seems to be working pretty well. In addition to Wirecast, we also used Illustrator to make the logo, which is there.
Yeah, there you go.
So for fault tolerant, and Illustrator works great for that. And we also used Premiere to make this infinite scrolling starscape behind us. But that they both came at a cost with the Adobe Creative Suite or Creative Cloud or whatever they call it now subscription. So we had to pay for that too. And then we were going to use NVIDIA Broadcaster, but we already covered that. And basically, it just doesn't work very well.
You want to see how that went? Watch the previous version of this episode. Just fast forward to the end and listen to the audio.
Yeah, we'll keep it up for you, so this way you can see what could possibly go wrong. but yeah, you're not going to like how it sounds. And then that brings us to services. There are certain services that we're using for this as well. So, obviously Twitch and YouTube, but also we needed a way to distribute the podcast. So we ended up going with a service called Spreaker, which Elio doesn't like the name of, but I want to name my cat after. I think Spreaker Cat sounds awesome. So Spreaker works great. It allows you to, at least we haven't really fully used it yet, so we'll get back to you on the bottom line with it. But so far, signing up for it, setting up our podcast was pretty simple. It gave us some pretty rudimentary, directions on how to do it, but just enough that we, people like Elio and I could figure it out. Even we could do it. Which is saying a lot considering how badly we failed at all the other things we talked about today. And then finally brings us to our final cherry on top, which was we needed some royalty-free music that we could use for the show. This music here. And Elio, why don't you tell them about where we got that?
You're going to have to help me with the name, but the process was rigorous. We literally spent 3 hours, or was it? It was something like 3 to 4 hours. It was insane. And just clicking through hundreds of, I think at least 300 to 400 songs, and just, no, not that one, too fast, too loud, too 70s porno-esque, too funky.
Not enough 70s porno-esque in my opinion.
So we finally narrowed it down to like 5 or 7 contenders, and then let's take a break, let's go do something else, we'll come back, and then we'll see which one. And we ended up with that one, and that is actually one of the high points of all of this, of all of the mess of dealing with technology and fighting it and all this. This was one of the most painless things. It wasn't cheap, so it was under $100, which is not bad at all.
It was $49. And yeah. It was through a service called Premium Beats, which is a a division of Shutterstock, and yeah, it was a very painless process.
And we had this. So for that $49, we had the actual sound, the full song, which is a few minutes long. We had a whole bunch of like variant clips of like shorter versions of it. We had what did you call it? The stems. Is that the term?
The stems. They're like basically the individual tracks of the song. So we could just have the drums come in, or just the arpeggio or whatever. We're not using them right now, but we could. Probably they would be used for something in the future.
And one of the nicest things, actually, is they give you a nice little PDF. So inevitably, you get a copyright strike from Twitch or YouTube or whatever, because the RAA is, they're back to their old tricks, trying to just kick everyone off everything if you're not paying them tons of money. You have a nice little PDF that says, nope, we paid, we have the legal right to this, and we can just send that right off and hopefully get our stuff back up nice and quick if they're little copyright content ID. If that gets a little too crazy and kicks us off anything, hopefully we'll be back quickly. So yeah, that was awesome. Really painless, really high quality product.
Indeed. And they made, the process of purchasing it real simple, the process of downloading everything real simple, gave us invoices in the PDF. It was super awesome. So good job, Premium Beats. We will be back to spend huge amounts of money on a single song again. So that's pretty much what it took, hardware and software wise, for us to get to this point. We might add some more things in the future, but for now, let's just leave it alone. Let's let it work.
Now it's time for content. So,
indeed.
So now that we're back, now that we've pretty much, after round 2 here, gotten things under control, all the fires out. We've got some interesting topics coming up. Looking at some of the stuff, we'll probably talk about quantum computing. We'll definitely be talking about AI and machine learning. We'll be talking about a little bit of cryptography, especially in conjunction with quantum, and then also just some general stuff. We'll probably reshoot. We did a little pilot episode that has some super distracting background visuals. If you want to watch that, it's up on YouTube already. But I've been I'm actually looking at being part of a cryptography grant. And for the last 10 years, I've watched dozens of cryptography talks in person and a whole bunch more on YouTube. And it drives me nuts. Like, this is like stuff you should know if you're talking about cryptography, like entropy and key space and all that fun stuff that everyone just breezes over. That's critically important to know. And then we have some other interesting stuff that we'll look at: data correlation and privacy. And there's a new hack that happened this morning after we finished our show. So if you haven't heard about the SolarWinds hack, you will. You'll hear it on the evening news probably for the next like 2 to 12 months. That one's going to be fascinating. So we'll do a little review of like, why is that such a big deal, and what does that mean for the future of cyber warfare and the threat landscape? So we got some good stuff coming up.
Yes, definitely. And boy, we have other like show ideas that we're coming up with. Right now, we are coming up with a new name for a show because we made we made a beginner's mistake and we didn't search for our show name before we started wanting to record for it. So the day we were going to record it, we were like, "Hey, let's get this up on YouTube." And we're like, "Somebody else already has that name. They have 100,000 followers." So yeah, we have to rebrand that one, but it's going to be a 2-hour long free-form tech conversation where Ailey and I are just going to start with one thing and let it lead to another, and it's not going to be as focused as Tech Topic will be. But we're going to be recording on a normal schedule from now on. We are recording on Saturdays, every Saturday at 1 p.m. 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. for Tech Topic, Mountain Standard Time. We're going to have a half-hour break after that, and then we're going to come back for 2 more hours in order to record the second show. They're going to be distributed on all of your podcast apps. The Tech Topic show will be distributed at 2 a.m. on Monday mornings, Mountain Time. And then the other show will be distributed on Wednesday at 2 a.m. This particular show is going to be distributed on this Wednesday at 2 a.m. Through all the podcast apps due to just, all of the issues that we had in recording the last one, which go onto YouTube. You'll see what we mean. It was not worthy for a first impression. Yeah, that's our plan for now. There might be other shows. There might be other things we're going to do. I plan on maybe doing some sort of a gaming show. So this way we can get back into things like Kerbal Space Program and, just whatever else that we want to do. Maybe even some coding shows. I have an idea for a coding show to help people get hired and help them train to get hired. So we'll put those together. We won't make any promises right now because, frankly, we're bad at promises. So we're going to stick with what we can definitely commit to right now, and we're just going to work on the rest of it as we go. Ailey, is there anything else you'd like to say as parting words?
Yeah, I guess only the thing that we touched on last night, which is just sheer stubbornness and will to make this happen. Whatever you're doing in life, whatever projects you're trying to work on or things you're trying to accomplish. This is one of those where you just can't give up. You just got to keep running into the wall sometimes. And we're here. We finally got it going again. And computing too, talking about getting hired. We'll probably cover that pretty in depth. You have to have that drive to get it done. And sometimes it's really frustrating and difficult, and it just takes time to finally get to where you need to be. So that's about it. Is whatever you're working on, keep that in mind. Keep plugging away, especially in 2020. Let's hope 2021 is less like 2020 and more like 2019.
Indeed. Well, everybody, that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for joining us here on Tech Topic. I am DC Rockwell. This is Ailey Grieco. This episode was sponsored by EGX.org, so go check out Ailey's and Christina's nonprofit. And that'll do it for tonight. So, everybody, have a good night and take care.